Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining us for Spiritual Toolkit, where we discuss life's diversity, challenges, and blessings. Thank you for being here. My name is Brock Ford, and I am your host. And joining me on the team is producer Peter Millard. Thank you, Peter, for helping us out. And a shout out to our New Thought Media Network founder and director, Robert Brzezinski. The idea for this show came from my sincere desire to be of support and a voice for the disenfranchised, the struggling, and hurting people within my reach. To offer spiritual and ethical practices that help others transform their lives, relationships, and careers. And my belief is that together we can build a bridge of understanding, healing, and equality for all, no exceptions. And to that point, we will have guests from all walks of life discussing real life and navigating its twists and turns. And you're invited to join us each week and to participate on the chat if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make. So, let's get started. I am so excited, y'all, to introduce you to Martha Creek, my mentor, my friend. She is our guest today. I'm going to read just a little bit about her bio for you. And so as a speaker and minister, leader and coach, consultant and facilitator, Martha Creek is described as having a spirit of innocence, playfulness, compassion, and generosity, and I believe every bit of that, which supports her in being able to deliver information in a profoundly simple, dynamic, and personal and attainable way. The practices and experience that Martha offers invite participants to approach their inner work as an adventurer with a sense of curiosity and wonder. And she also calls forth the most stubborn, self-defeating, and embedded patterns in participants with an invitation to a new reality. And y'all, Martha has 100 miles of long list of accomplishments and awards and degrees and graduate degrees. And so I'm not going to name them all, but she's a graduate of Emerson Theological Institute. She's attended Hoffman Institute, Byron Katie School, Healthy Congregations, Transcendental Meditation, Reiki, and she's also been a minister in religious science and unity churches. And Martha's mission is, and I just love this, go within or go without. And my friends, an experience with Martha is an experience of love for sure. I can guarantee that. And for information about Martha, you can check out her website at marthacreek.com. And now, y'all, I'm jumping for joy to introduce to you my soul sister, my beloved friend and mentor, who has made an amazing impact on my life. So here we go. Miss Martha Creek, welcome. Welcome to Spiritual Toolkit.
How do you do? How do you do? Glad to be here. And I was thinking if you drop a few more of those y'all, we'll have to get a translator in here to help people that don't understand the Southern slang.
Well, you can translate for me because you know it really well. So thank you. Oh, so how about would it be okay if we get started by you sort of talking a little bit about your childhood and growing up in Kentucky and how that sort of influenced you?
Well, sure. You can ask me anything you want to. As far as I know, honey, I'm born and raised in Bug Tussle, Kentucky, which is on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky, right in the middle of the state. And I was in a family that didn't go to church and still ascribed to doing the right thing, learning, and upholding spiritual practices without going to church. But as a kid, I wanted to go to church. So I told my mama I want to go to church. And she, in her classic mama way, said, well, fine, go find you a way to get to church. If you want to go to church, go find you a way to get to church. So I started calling around the neighbors and asked them, do you go to church and where do you go? And can I go with you? And I went to the church that was closest to my house, which happens to be a Baptist church. And I was uneasy with a particular man that was in the church. And I came home and told my mother I wasn't going back there anymore because this man was creeping me out. And she told me, don't ever say that again. Like, don't speak that because he happens to be a deacon. And he is not to say it. And even as a little kid, I had a conviction that was strange, that I don't know what others think, but I know what's true for me. And it's like, I don't know what's going on there, but I don't want to be back over there at that church with him. And later it became public that he was actually um, um, in some trouble with his young girls. So in the meantime, I called other neighbors and found a church that they went to that I love very much. Love the people in the church and love my Sunday school teacher. And I still love her today. She gave me my first Bible. She gave me assignments. I got to memorize things. I got to be the teacher's assistant. And I got to be in the presence of scripture and spiritual teachings. And I believed parts of it, and I didn't believe everything about it. And even as a little kid, I took the part that worked for me and questioned what I actually believed, and could see that even though people I respect, the elders, believed some of the teaching, I actually didn't believe it. Like, I didn't believe that God is a punishing God. And instead of trying to mm, believe what they believed, I worked at my own convictions and what I actually believed.
Hmm.
So I'm very fond of going there. I'm very fond and very, very grateful for those primarily women. Even though the minister was a man, I had no relationship whatsoever to the minister. It was my Sunday school teacher and the women in the church that I had my relationship with. And they were the ones that supported me in the goals that I had there, which was to learn and to study and to have my own relationship with biblical teachings.
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know that, because I know you and you know me, that innate feeling of God, of spirit, was always there with you, and that's what was calling you, I guess, to want to go to church somewhere.
That I
Did
had
we?
an absolute determination to always be a student. I wanted to learn something, and I wanted to learn what it was about, and to see what people get from it and what do they actually believe. And I'm very, very grateful today that I've still developed my own beliefs, and
Hmm.
I really honor that today. Like, if I'm conscious at all, I will not be telling other people what to believe.
Hmm.
I believe that people's theology is their own business, and I'm not here to tell somebody else what theology they should ascribe to. And I've not been all that keen on other people putting their beliefs on me either, because I'm responsible for what I believe, and I'm
Hmm.
responsible for living a life that's in accordance with what I believe, not trying to uphold somebody else's belief system.
Hmm. And that's one of the things, Martha, that you taught your students, me, as part of your students, to follow that innate feeling, that innate knowledge, that innate belief. And that's what's led me, and because of what you taught me. So I totally agree with that. And I'm glad that you're there for all of us, actually. So thank you. Did you have a role model that influenced you during that time that made you want to go and do more?
Well, I think my Sunday school teacher, her name was Clio, and she lived to be 99, and that's
Kaya.
who gave me my Bible. And she assigned me things to read scripture. So I was very much of a student. So she was actually my teacher. She was a Sunday school teacher, but I very much saw her as a teacher. So I was pretty willing to do whatever she did. I also was encouraged by other elders in the church, other women, somebody named Roxy, actually, for me to develop and to look at what I needed to look at in my own life, and to take responsibility for the condition of my soul, and for me to keep right my relationship with God, with Creator. And she was encouraging about that. She also approached me about being to an altar call, to invite me to the altar, and for prayer around that. And I remember thinking, it makes sense to them. I can understand this altar call, although I couldn't understand um, I could absolutely understand repentance and wanting to have forgiveness. I also was believing that God wasn't holding anything against me, that as much as I had done, quote, wrong or missed the mark or sinned or whatever, Like there was never a doubt in my mind that I was forgiven,
How long, even before you went to church?
even before I went to church.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that I was there to explore. I was there, just as you said in the bio, as a sense of adventure. I was there to see what this is all about and to really bump up against my own belief systems to see where does this align with others and where am I out of alignment with others, and to see
Mm-hmm.
whatever gaps are there. Is it something I want to work on, or is it something I need to address or look at?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't actually, I was also invited for baptism um, after that altar call, and I didn't see any need for it. I wasn't opposed to it. I absolutely understood that other people need to do this, and I didn't have a need for that.
And to me, that's amazing, Martha, because at that early age, you you innately knew. I guess you were just born this way, but you knew what you wanted to do and what you didn't want to do, and that you were okay not doing what you didn't want to do and doing what you did want to do. And
Well,
I look back and I don't know any kids that were like that.
I at least in that way I could. The better news about it is I didn't think my way was the right way. I thought my way is the right way for me,
Mm-hmm.
and the other's way is the right way for them. So the best news about that is that I didn't put my beliefs off on somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And Lord, wouldn't that be wonderful if everybody had that kind of belief like you? I mean, it would be everybody be loving on each other. It'd be a
Well, that
wonderful
is,
thing.
I was thinking about that, Brock, as we got ready for this today. Like some of them very practical things that have guided me all these years are the simple commandments. So I took seriously the command to love,
Mm-hmm.
and I've really struggled with that. I remember working with teachers over the years, like I do not love everybody. What am I going to do? I'm so ashamed of myself because I don't love everybody. And the truth is, I did love everybody. I didn't love their behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love how they treat other people. And I remember having, even at an early age, a deep compassion for it. Like, I could have easily been, I feel like I'm pretty naive anyway, but I would have been even more naive if I didn't have to work at staying awake to just what the human being is capable of. And that it's a full spectrum of that, which includes atrocities. And that I also had a compassion for that, that they would not do that if they knew God. If they had a relationship with God, they wouldn't behave that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the hope, isn't it?
Well, it is, there's hope in it, and there's real possibility in it. I think that's what part of faith is about.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know God yet. So their relationship with God is something different. And like it's a full-time job for me to keep my relationship with God intact and to
Mm-hmm.
keep my own spiritual practices going. So I don't have any time to cast the first stones or whatever, or throw rocks in glass houses or whatever the things are.
Exactly. Our producer Peter just messaged me and said that he would like to ask you a question. Peter, pop in and ask her a question.
Hi, Martha.
I,
Thank you, Reverend Brock, for letting me ask a question.
Sure.
Martha, I can't pretend to know or have as much experience like working in my spiritual garden, my spiritual greenhouse, as either you or Brock. But the years ago, a Taoist acupuncturist introduced me to some principles, and one was that in nothingness, truth emerges. And that was her attempt to get me to begin meditating and to begin the journey. And that was such a revelation for me. And there's a lot of steps along the path, but from that small seed, I came to learn that God, or in unity and in some other traditions, you call it spirit, is everywhere. It is in everything. And I'm wondering, as I hear you talk about your own principles and your own internal guidance to have compassion, or I don't need to be baptized and things like that, when or how did the sense that God is in me, I am a part of all that is godly, when did that sort of sensibility emerge? It seems to me that that's an important tenet in unity and some of the teachings I've heard from Brock.
Well, I don't know. I don't think there was, I personally didn't have a time or place or a marker that went down, Peter, that said, oh, this is the day I started to believe. But I had a relationship with it for most of my earliest memories. And even when my granddaddy died, I was 3 when he died, and he was my hero. He's who I defined love by, my maternal grandfather, Pa Henry. And I remember at the funeral and my mother wailing and crying her guts out over this, her daddy dying. And the thought that I had, even as a 3-year-old, is she thinks he's dead.
Hmm.
And I wasn't experiencing him as dead. So it's like death couldn't take him from me. So even as a little child, and others can say that's absolute denial, that was my shock, and they could be right. I'm not a psychologist, I don't know. But it's like I had a different experience with transition, with death, and with him changing form. And I don't have a recall of having like a period of grief with it, even though he was, quote, my world back then. I also believe that it emerged over time with this curiosity that I have to ask questions and to look at my own convictions and what I actually believe, and to be willing to have my mind changed, to be wrong about it, and to be truer to what I was going to be responsible for. At the end of my life, it'll be me answering for my own life in some one way or the other. And that's a full-time job for me. And I absolutely accept that other people reference God as a deity, as the creator of all that is. I also accept that people don't want to hear the word God, that their life experiences has left them not believing in something, even atheist. And I absolutely understand that too, from my own times of bewilderment and confusions and doubts and things like that. So I don't know that there's been an emergence. I think that the emergence is direction that I go in for my life, and that it's still emerging. Even today, my relationship is still in an emergent state, that I don't feel like I've arrived somewhere or it's a tick box exercise or anything like that. So I don't, there's no time or place where I had a transformation of my psyche or my belief system or my mind or anything like that.
I see. Yeah, it does sound like you always sort of had your own path with that. It wasn't a big epiphany or revelation. I also think that you said you were willing to have your mind changed. That's a hard one for me still at my age. So I'm going to keep that in mind.
Well, it's too much, it's part of, and that's not absolute, honey. There's things that I go into very hard-headed, even knuckleheaded about, like, oh, I know how this ought to go, or I know what's right here. But it's like, I also can hear myself and know that that's pure nonsense, that my beliefs and what I think is right and wrong is only belongs to me.
To you.
They're not somebody else's. And if I try to displace those off onto somebody else and to try to make my belief system theirs, it's not going to go well. It erodes relationships. And it's just absolutely none of my business what somebody else is believing.
Very good. Well, thank you for answering that for me.
Thank you for asking that, Peter. And Martha, that leads me to, it made me think of rather the 4 questions in Byron Katie. And I know that you teach from Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is, because I took that class. Matter of fact, real quickly, everybody, the first time I met Martha, I was board president of Unity San Francisco, and we had just hired our new senior minister. And he had asked me that same week if I wanted to go to Unity Village and go to a workshop, and could we spend the money? And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about it. And I said, sure, we can go, and we did. And we got to Unity Village, and I had never heard of Martha, didn't know who she was or anything of that nature. And as soon as I walked into that classroom, because it was sort of I think it was a weekend thing, wasn't it, Martha?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I saw her, I just knew who she was. I mean, I could feel her, I could see her. It was almost as though I had known her my whole life. And when she got up to start teaching the Loving What Is process, the questions, the 4 questions that come up are, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? And how do you react? And what happens when you believe that thought? And who would you be without that thought? That paragraph right there changed my life totally. And after the course was over, or maybe for that day when had it ended, I went up to her and I just had to hug her and get to know her and say, can I teach this stuff? I've been looking for this my whole life. And it truly answered what I needed in that moment, and how to go about having more healthy relationships in my life. And I am so grateful, Martha, for you teaching that. And we've become wonderful friends, and she's definitely my mentor and done so many wonderful things in my life to help me. But I wanted to bring that up because I know that's one of your core teachings, isn't it? To teach Loving What Is?
Well, it's I consider it facilitating that.
Okay.
It's the Loving What Is the name of the book. Byron Katie's the author, and the subtitle of the book is 4 Questions to Change Your Life, and that's what it's about for me. And I consider myself a facilitator of that work. So it's not something really to teach for me, because you can teach the platitudes of it. You can run around doing Martha-isms and Katie-isms all day long and never really embody the work, which is actually using the work, which is questioning what I believe, and working with any stressful thought. These questions meet the mind from a different polarity of the mind and bring us back to another possibility, which is like somebody that didn't call me back, believing like they should have called me back. They should have called me back. After all I've done for them, they should have called me back. And it's like the source is the stress is not that they didn't call me back. The source of the stress is I am opposing what's real. I'm opposing reality, and any should, for example, opposes reality. So they didn't call me back is a much more empowering statement. They should have called me back. Is it true? Is that reality based or is that fantasy based? Well, they haven't called me back. So it's actually fantasy. They didn't call me back. Then how do I react when I'm believing they should have called me back? Then it's like, well, I'm righteous, indignant, frustrated, irritated, mad, put out, holding everything against them, dredging the past for all the other offenses they have created. So I'm an offense collector, gathering offenses, gathering all the proof for how wronged I have been. And then the question then is, well, who would I be in this situation if I simply didn't believe they should have called me back? And I'd be saner, I'd be more calm. And if I wanted to speak to them, I'd be calling them again. Instead of waiting for them to call and judging them for not calling, I would be taking appropriate, sane, sensible action to reach back out to them to call them. So I'd be empowered. I'd be impeccable with my own word. I would be not taking it personally that they haven't called me back. I wouldn't be interpreting why they haven't called back and then believing what I was interpreting. So there's an entire world that exists in using inquiry to see what am I actually believing, what's the consequence on me of believing this, and what's the possibility for me if I simply didn't believe this, in this case, one thought. So it's free, it's available, thework.com for resourcing. If you want to check it out, you're absolutely welcome to go for it. And everything you need to do the work is there.
Thank you for explaining that, Martha. I think it helps everyone understand it a little bit better. And I will have to say also, and I hope Peter doesn't get mad at me, but after that Unity Village trip back in 2014 when we met, I know I've already talked to you about it, but on the way home on that flight, I was preparing to land in San Francisco and Peter to pick me up. And I knew that I wanted him to do some things on the way home that he probably wasn't going to want to do. But at any rate, but I utilized that the second I touched ground, and Peter and I started dealing with each other in a different way. And the more I did that, and the more I allowed him to just be him, the more he allowed me to just be me, and we got along a whole lot better. And look at us today, being really good friends and working on a show together. But at any rate, the principles of that truly does work and helps people really navigate their own thoughts and what they're doing with other people. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome, honey. It holds all the power for spiritual evolution, spiritual enlightenment, because these parts of ourselves that we have disowned, disintegrated, denied, suppressed, depressed, disowned, are all waiting for healing. And this work is a doorway to go back to that, because everything I hate about you or others is some part of myself that I hate. So it is absolutely a return to myself and to bring back an integration of the parts that I have disowned over a period of this life and then generations and generations before us that was handed down this.
Thank you for that. And everyone, I think we're going to take about a 3-minute break, if that's okay. Peter, you can take us to break, and we'll be right back with Martha Creek. Take a comfort break, take about 3 minutes, and we'll be waiting for you when you get back on New Thought Media Network.
Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change.
All right, and we're back with Martha Creek live. There she is. Hi, Martha. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Peter, thank you for that break. We were talking about loving what is, and I think we got that pretty well. I wanted to ask a couple more questions, Martha. Would you share with us a little bit about how you found affiliated New Thought, Emerson, all of that, and got involved with all of that? And I know that you've helped me so greatly to know these people as well, and it's really changed my life. How did you get introduced to that?
Well, it started when I was a kid, and I knew that when I turned 40 years old, I was going to go and become a minister officially. So
Okay.
whatever I had done at age 40 was going to be complete. And I would spend the rest of my years, ever how many years I lived past 40, serving ministry. And my call was to minister to ministers and to minister to ministries, particularly ones that were in transition or in a particular challenge of anything. So I started asking around when I was coming up on 40, when I was around 37 years old, about where I was going to do this, what ordination path I was going to take, and where I was going to study, what seminary, and all of that. And I started telling, as I talked about this with people, they asked me what I believed. And when I told them what I believed, they would answer with, "Oh, your new thought. Oh, your new thought." And I'm like, okay, then what is new thought? So I started looking into it like that. And there was a religious science church here in Nashville where I lived at the time. And I went over there to check it out. So that was my first introduction. I rolled in practitioner training straight away, started reading, doing mind treatments, and got the basic education, 3 years of that. And then moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and thought I would start a center or something up there. And somebody had just started a center there. So no way, no how was I going to conflict that or usurp, any kind of power, anything that they had, any possibility they had. And I kept getting called, energetically pulled into this building that was near where I lived. And I thought it was a synagogue, a temple. And I asked my staff there, what is this temple? What's the name of it? What do y'all know about it? Because I was getting sucked in there like a vacuum cleaner energetically. And they said, no, it's not a synagogue anymore. It's a unity church. So I went over there and it was like a veil opened, like I was seeing my purpose in being there was this. And when I ask questions about what's the difference between unity and science of mind, I'm still asking that question for 20 some odd years now. And back then when I asked, the primary answer I got was semantics. That one calls it prayer, one treatment, one refers to it as universe science. More science slanted, one's more Christianity slanted. So it was semantics, and it either worked just fine with me. So whatever differences there that existed, I didn't give them any power to make a difference in me. So both ways were fine. And then I started serving churches at that same time, and I've then got training in all matters of seminary training, conflict in churches, healthy congregations, facilitated healthy congregations. I'm a trainer for healthy congregations facilitators, mediation skills, crucial conversations, and all sorts of all the required elements that unity had to become a unity minister, as well as the religious science that. And since then, a divine science route, which was reciprocal with some of the studies were reciprocal that they transferred over. And I was asking mentors back then, where am I going to go? Like, what's going to be my path? Because the others that I'd looked at wasn't my path. It was some of it was more academic than what, and I'm a 4.0, so I graduated salutatorian. So I'm a student. I love to study, but I didn't want my seminary training to be an academic endeavor. I wanted it to be an experiential endeavor and a deepening of my relationship with God, with Source, and me really getting clearer and clearer about my own convictions and what I actually believed. And when I talked about this and asked my mentors, they said, it's Emerson. You ought to go to Emerson. And I was also wanting to study and go to seminary while I was serving in the field. So I didn't want to quit serving a ministry to go live somewhere and take seminary training. And I was able to do it, which is now most of them call it field training. I was field trained. So while I was serving a church, training chaplains, writing curriculum, serving youth and family, teaching, doing speaking and all of that. I could record all that, send in my lessons, send in my speaking and all of that, and get credit for it. And Emerson Theological Institute was the path that made it possible for me to do that without me up and moving somewhere and being able to serve while I was also in seminary training. And that's 20 some odd years ago now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know that you've introduced me to both of those, and they've become family to me as well. It's a wonderful group of people.
And the affiliated New Thought Network, ANTN, which is antn.org, I thought that was Emerson back in the day. I didn't even know the difference, because one is the ordination path, the other is a membership path for how to serve in ministry and to have alternative types of ministries and ministries without walls and other things. And Anton.org was the membership route for that. So I got involved with their leadership and served the board many years. And we still hold this fantastic retreat and conference out at Unity Village every year, October 2 to 6. That's open if anybody wants to come and check out the organization itself and see what we're about as people and leaders, and to also be on Unity grounds and villages out there at Unity Village, to be on their grounds. So there's fantastic music, fantastic food, candlelight labyrinth walks, and all sorts of ways to serve, the high prayer visual and other things that we get to do as a part of our retreat time. And it's coming up here in just a few months. So open invitation to come out there and see, and extraordinary music and leaders, and it's all outlined there at antn.org.
Okay, Martha, I just wanted to step in. I have antn.org on the screen. That's where viewers can go to figure out about the retreat in October.
Yes,
okay.
And to register and to see who the members of the organization are. There's other resources there. Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I have the right thing on the screen. Thank you.
Yes, it's antn.org. Thank you, Peter, for doing that. And Martha, thank you for introducing me to them also. It's because of Martha, everybody, that I got into Emerson, and because of Angelo Pizzello, the founder of it. And they nurtured me all the way through those 3 years. And I got my ordination, my master's, and my doctorate. And so without Martha, I wouldn't be here talking to any of you. So I love her so much. Thank you, Martha. And I love Angelo too. I wanted to switch gears just a little bit, if that's okay, because I just recently read your newsletter, because I didn't see it the day it popped up, and it was in my news feed. And I just read it the other day, Martha, and you wrote about what brings you joy in that. And I just read it about 2 or 3 times, and you stated that some of your favorite joy moments in the last few years have been philanthropic. And so can you elaborate a little bit about that and your joy? Because I know also in a few minutes I'm going to share with y'all Martha's book. It's called Martha's Pearls. And there's a passage in there I want to share with you about joy also. But can you share a little bit, Martha, about the joy that you were talking about in your newsletter?
I noticed recently that I'm not speaking much about joy, although it's one of my core values. And I want to be a spreader of joy. So I just posted a video of us out in a restaurant just a few days ago with this young little 9-year-old girl whose birthday was last month. And she said, "Could we make this my birthday again today? Could you have them to come out and sing to me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And the other little girl with us said, "It's not really my birthday, but could we pretend that it's my birthday?" And I said, "Absolutely." So they all came out and sang, and they got whipped cream on their face. And in the video is this couple that's at the table behind us, and their faces are aglow with joy, with this singing, with these antics, with this. And I thought, this is part of what the power of joy can do. We're joy spreaders. We're spreading joy. So just like anxiety spreads and hate spreads, there's also some joy we can spread too. And I notice it's very important for me in working with humans and in my own conflicted mind that I've got to keep it balanced. So I've got to find joy. And that's the last Sunday talk I just recorded yesterday and sent into a Michigan ministry that I serve. The title was Finding Joy in Unexpected Places. And that's what I'm practicing since I put that recording together yesterday. And I got some chances to practice because I had these girls here in my house and they mixed up a big bowl of pancake batter. And just as we were ready to kind of get it going in the pancake mix, they dropped it off the counter. And it went all over the floor, all over the counters, and all over the cabinets. And we didn't let it steal our joy from us. So I could have had a big knee-jerk reaction to that. OMG, what a mess. And I am so committed to not traumatizing young folks and not to pass my anxieties and my frustrations and my uneasiness off onto young ones. So I was so pleased and proud of myself that I didn't have any knee-jerk reaction to that. And even with that big old pancake batter mess on the floor, it didn't rob us of joy. And philanthropic includes things like these girls were watching this little TV cartoon called Bluey. And Bluey is about moral living. So I highly recommend it if you're going to watch TV at all. And I learn from Bluey episodes every time I see one. And this little episode was about playing games at a birthday party, and they were passing the parcel. And whoever got the parcel when the music stopped, they got to keep the gift. Well, of course, the kids were wanting to get the gift. And then throughout the game, one of the kids, Bluey's little sister, Bingo, realized, oh, what's better than getting the gift is somebody else getting the gift. So she had more fun watching somebody else get the gift than she did actually getting the gift herself. So she had a transformation of her mind. And that describes what happened in my mind when I get more fun out of giving the gift than I do getting a gift. So philanthropic ways are everywhere for me, and me looking at how I can make somebody's day. And it's often teachers in classrooms and students that are trying to achieve a certain goal. And for my birthday, people are so generous to give me birthday gifts. And I gather up all the money they give me for my birthday gift and turn around and give it to WaterStep, for example, waterstep.org. And these are first responders when there's a tragedy and there's been a calamity, a disaster of some sort. They're first in there to get water restored for the people that live there, and including right here in our own backyard and what we had in Kentucky and Tennessee and all of that last year and throughout the world. So it's more fun for me to pass that money over to them than it is for me to have that money, for example. And that's one example. That's one way of it. And finding ways that I can make somebody's day, like very interesting ways for what I can do to change a life by making somebody's day through my own giving.
Wow. Thank you for that. I actually had the WaterStep on my notes to ask you about, so thank you for bringing that up. I know that's important to you. And every year, if you want to look Martha up on her Facebook page, she has that on her Facebook page to donate to. So it's a wonderful outlet.
And it's great fun. And then whatever monies other people give me, that goes to WaterStep. And then I match the funds, so they get more money that way. And the last 2 years, they're like, oh my goodness, we want every day to be Martha Creek's birthday. I'm like, absolutely, we do. And there's been other opportunities like that. So it doesn't have to be WaterStep. I mean, just find one that's meaningful to your heart. Find one, everybody, whoever's listening to this, that you have some passion for. And it doesn't have to be WaterStep. Just find something that would be meaningful. Last year, I sent one of the teacher that Hadlin was going to have at her school had posted her wish list on for her classroom that she was setting up. And I decided, and I talked it over. I said, we're gonna get her some of this stuff on this list. And then I decided to give her everything on the list. And she responded with, because she got part of it on Monday, and she said she cried. She was so moved and touched by it. I never even had met her. that she was so moved by this, she cried and she felt like a kid at Christmas. And I thought, bingo, that's what I'm about, feeling like a kid at Christmas. And then she said some more came on Tuesday. So she was crying again. And then even more stuff came on Wednesday. So it took 3 days for it to all get delivered.
Mhm.
And that was like watching her and seeing how moved she was by that is the greatest gift. That's the greatest feeling in the world to me, particularly when somebody's not expecting it. It's different. It's different for me when somebody's looking for a handout, or it's different. So it's about hand ups, hand ups instead of handouts for me. And somebody, it's always been important to me in my whatever I'm going to give. It's got to be somebody that's actually working. So that's my own core value too. They've got to be somebody that's willing to put some skin in the game. And these teachers definitely have put skin in the game, I believe.
Do you remember, I think it was about maybe 2 or 3 years ago for Halloween, little Miss Haviland got a banana. Someone gave her a banana. Do you remember that? And she came running down the street to meet us and was waving that banana. I got a banana. I got a banana. She was so happy. And to this day, I still talk about that to people because of the joy that was in that little baby's face when she came running down the street with that banana. Who would have thunk it? You know, she
Well,
didn't get candy. She got a banana.
it's a great example, Brock. And if you remember, that particular night wasn't even Halloween, and she wanted to go trick or treating because she wasn't going to be here on Halloween. So I
Yeah.
just got on the phone, called 2 or 3 of the neighbors, and said, "Can you drum up something to give to this kid?" When she knocked at the door, and they're like, oh my God, I don't have any candy. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like one said, I got a sweet potato. Can I give her a sweet? And I said, it doesn't matter what you give this child. It doesn't matter to her because she's in it just for the fun of it, the joy of it. And you got to witness it. And then that neighbor called another neighbor. So she ended up getting to go to 3 or 4 houses. And she got a banana and a health bar of some sort, and
Yeah.
maybe a piece of candy or 2. But as I recall, she also got $100 bill from somebody.
Yes,
So
she did.
she still treasures those memories, and that was also her experience of what these neighbors are like.
Hmm.
Like she wouldn't have known anything about who lives behind these doors here without doing things like that. So she has a direct experience now of their own generosity, and she still speaks fondly till this day about what good neighbors we have and how appreciative she is of our neighbors, how much we love our neighbors.
Well, I just thought that was funny, and it just popped up in my mind. It was a wonderful memory. But the joy of Haviland, and the joy that we can be like Haviland.
And
And y'all,
it doesn't mean that there's not going to be challenges, honey. That it's
hmm
not joy, 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 happy, happy, happy all the time. It's like it's real. You know, death and disease and maiming and raping and robbing and pillaging and cancers and evictions and homelessness and starvation and everything else under the sun is part of it too. That's part of the lay of the land we're in here in this human experience. And I can't do what I do and serve the way I serve if I don't keep some of that in balance.
hmm
That I've got to find the joy in unexpected places. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to deny that there's despair and that there's pain and suffering. That's included. That is absolutely part of the reality. And there's joy even in the losses. There's joy for having had somebody in our life. There's joy for having the health that we have. Gratitude for having what we have, even when we're in a time of loss.
Amen. That's true. Thank you for sharing that. Real quickly, we've got about 5 minutes. I am going to, hope everybody can see that. If you're interested, it's called Martha's Pearls, A Spiritual Approach to Life, and you can find that on Amazon.com. But I wanted to read just a little part of this book, and I think there's a lot of pages, but on page 89, something really struck me, and I'm going to share it if that's okay. But it talks about, and this is what Martha wrote, but fixing ourselves, so to speak. And conjunction junction, what's your function? You remember that song. So Martha says, I'm a little less interested in what our functions are and more concerned with our functioning, no matter the functions. So how are you functioning? As a divine being in a human experience, have you noticed you are sometimes prone to patterns, upsets, confusions, edges, and bristling? And then it goes over to say, no matter what our function or current level of functioning, I believe at a core level we all desire to be our best selves, to emotionally present and at the highest level of functionality. It is important that we learn to manage ourselves, and this would require that we distinguish fact from feelings, we assume responsibility for our own feelings, we don't assume responsibility for others' feelings, we regulate our own anxiety, we define ourselves to others and stay in touch with them and where they are coming from, and we do not insist or expect others to think, feel, or act as we do. That's the most important one that resonates with me. We do not insist or expect others to think, feel, or act the way I do. Allow time for things to process, offer patience, hang in there, persevere, and be uncommonly motivated to see things through. Use a wide repertoire of responses, be resilient, accept the anxiety, tension, and pain are a part of the human healing experience. I just love that part, and I wanted to share that with everybody. And again, Martha's Pearls. Thank you, Martha, for writing that. It's a wonderful book.
Thank you, Brock. I keep that on a list. I don't leave home without that list. There's even more about that on the YouTube channel. If you go over to YouTube and put in Martha Creek, I outlined 30 of those practices there in a little subtitle called Presence and Power, or Presence and Functioning. So that's absolutely free, and you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and anytime I post a new teaching or a new recorded message, it automatically will send it out to you. And that's also another way that we can get these empowered teachings out to the whole of the world.
Mm-hmm. And you can sign up on her website also for her newsletter, I believe, right, Martha?
Yes, and all the recordings and the newsletter and all that is at no charge. Everything's free.
Okay. Well, we're getting close to time, y'all. Martha, any last thoughts you want to share with us?
Well, I just want to encourage you, whoever's listening to this, to be absolutely as true to yourself as possible. And it's not just a platitude, to thine own self be true, but all the potential in the universe to change the world, to be the change we want to see in the world. I believe it's critical for us to be true to ourselves. And the parts of us that we have left behind, the parts of us that are afraid and scared and constricted and worried and all of that, to accept those parts of ourselves. And that part of our becoming whole is not to leave any of these parts behind. And there's parts that you can't do alone. So get a spiritual mentor, somebody spiritually directing, a coach, a counselor, a pastor, clergy, a therapist, anybody in the world that can uplift you and support you in this endeavor of being and becoming all that you're here to be. That I know who you are. I know what you are as a divine being. So I know who you are and whose you are. And I know that you're here in service, and that I want to uplift it any way possible so that you have a better time of it than you've had up until now.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that, Martha. And I hope everybody, and I'm sure all the listeners and people watching can resonate with that. And I take that into my heart. It felt like I just had a sermon in that brief little sentence. So thank you. So I love you, Martha. Thank you for being here. We've come to the end of our show. And Martha, I'm so grateful for your participation and sharing such interesting, thoughtful, and helpful information. And I know it comes from the depth of love of your heart. Thank you. You're welcome
for any part I have, honey. And God bless you and everybody that this ever reaches in whatever you're here to live out in the world.
Thank you. And thank you to all the viewers. And people are subscribing, y'all. People are starting to subscribe to this show. So if you want to see it every week and get reminders about it and the link and everything, go on to New Thought Media Network. It's htmedia.org. and sign up and subscribe for this show. And join us next week. I've got two guests, Dr. Kurt Prine and Donnie Lowbrey of Flesh and Spirit Community, Queer Men on an Ecstatic Path of Transformation. And y'all, I've known these guys for about 20 years, something like that. And they're big in the San Francisco community. They hold workshops and seminars and things of that nature at their home. But they're going to come join us next week on the show, and I'm very excited to have them. So make sure to check out all the other great shows on New Thought Media Network at ntmedia.org. Good night, everyone. I love you, Martha. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to New Thought Media and Robert. Blessings galore to y'all. I love you. Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Mm-hmm.